Every single day we're moving money, paying bills, and basically running our entire financial lives with just a few taps on a screen. But have you ever really stopped to think about the invisible fortress of rules that makes all of that possible? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on the official blueprint that banks use to build that digital fortress and, most importantly, to keep your money safe. Just think about that for a second. That simple tap for your morning coffee, it sends this little ripple of data across so many different systems. And it feels totally instant, right? Seamless. But behind that convenience is this massive, highly regulated security operation. Its entire job to protect that one single transaction and the millions of others just like it happening every single second. So how in the world do they pull it off? All right, here's our game plan. First, we're going to figure out what the digital assets even are, the stuff that actually needs protecting. Then, we'll see how the fortress gets built, how its defenses are turned on, and what happens when there's a crisis. And finally, we'll bring it all home and talk about why this whole complex system is so crucial for our peace of mind. Okay, first things first. It just makes sense, right? You can't build a fortress if you don't even know what treasures you're trying to protect. So the regulations start with a really fundamental step: forcing banks and financial institutions to identify and classify their most critical digital assets. It all kicks off with defining the core business. These are the absolute non-negotiables. Can you imagine what would happen if you couldn't make a deposit, get a loan, or send a wire transfer? It'd be chaos. That's exactly why regulators demand that banks identify these core functions with total clarity. They are, without a doubt, priority number one. And right there, inside those core services, is where we find the real crown jewels: sensitive data. And the rules here are incredibly specific. We're not just talking about your account balance. We're talking about the keys to your entire financial kingdom: your logins, your passwords, your PINs, and all the personal info that proves you are who you say you are. Protecting this data is the whole point of the mission. Okay, so the rules are smart about this. They know that not all computer systems are created equal. So banks have to categorize them into 3 different tiers. Think of Type 1 systems as the front lines: your e-banking app, the ATM network. They touch customers directly, so they get the absolute highest level of protection. Then you have Type 2 systems, which are for staff, like the software call center uses. Still really important, but one step removed. And finally, Type 3 are the purely internal systems, like HR or accounting. They're still secured, of course, but the level of fortification matches the much lower risk. This whole tiered approach is all about putting the biggest guards on the biggest treasures. So, now that we know what we're protecting, let's get into how the fortress itself is actually built. And you might be surprised to hear that the foundation isn't really made of code or fancy tech. Nope. It's built with people, policies, and some very real physical walls. It all comes down to these 3 fundamental pillars. First up is governance, basically the rules of the game, and they're set from the very top. Second, personnel, making sure the people inside the fortress are trustworthy and only have the keys they need. And third, physical security, because let's not forget, this digital world runs on actual machines in actual buildings. And this right here, this quote, it gets right to the heart of that first pillar: governance. This isn't just some memo that the IT department sends out. The regulations are crystal clear that the information security policy has to be approved by the board of directors. That makes cybersecurity a top-level boardroom responsibility, not just some techie afterthought. Next up, personnel. The rules are unbelievably strict about who gets access to what. It's all based on something called the principle of least privilege, which is a fancy way of saying you only get the keys you absolutely need to do your job, and not a single key more. And here's the kicker: the moment an employee leaves the company, bam, their access is revoked. Immediately, no forgotten keys left lying around. You want to know how specific these rules get? Just look at this number: 12. Article 4 says that fixed passwords have to be a minimum of 12 complex characters. It's such a simple, clear rule, but it has a huge tangible impact on security for absolutely everyone. Now, this fortress isn't just a bunch of code. It's got real, physical walls. We're talking about data centers, the literal brains of the bank, and they are protected like a modern-day Fort Knox. The guidelines say you can't build them in high-risk areas like floodplains, and they require super strict access control with surveillance and detailed logs of every single person who comes and goes. And this physical planning? Oh, it goes way deeper. What happens if the power grid goes down? Well, the data center has to have enough backup power and resources to keep running for a minimum of 72 hours. That's 3 entire days of resilience, built right into the very foundation of the fortress. Okay, so the walls are built, the foundation is solid. But a fortress can't just be a static building, right? It needs active defenses. It needs sentries on the walls, patrols on the perimeter. This next section is all about that ongoing, dynamic, day in, day out work of cybersecurity. So, what does this daily guard duty actually look like? Well, it's a constant cycle. Article 10 mandates a whole laundry list of proactive measures. Banks are constantly scanning their own systems for weaknesses, updating their antivirus software, and even running simulated phishing attacks on their own staff just to keep everyone on their toes. And at the very same time, they're monitoring for huge assaults like DDoS attacks and making sure their firewalls are holding strong. To protect the most sensitive data, the network itself is designed just like a medieval castle. There's an outer wall, which in tech speak is called the DMZ, or Demilitarized Zone. That's where the public-facing stuff lives. But for an attacker to get any deeper, they'd have to breach another, stronger layer of firewalls just to reach the secure inner keep, which is the only place your sensitive data is ever stored. Okay, this next one is absolutely critical. Separation. The live operating environment, where your actual money and data live, has to be completely and totally isolated from the testing environment, where developers are busy building and trying out new features. The rules are explicit. They cannot share the same equipment, the same passwords, or the same security keys. This is what prevents a weird bug in some new piece of code from ever affecting the real live system. All right, so what happens when an attacker actually gets past the walls? Because let's be real, no fortress is ever 100% impenetrable. So a huge part of security isn't just about defense. It's about having a world-class plan for the moment a crisis hits. So Article 16 gives them a crystal clear 4-step playbook for responding to an incident. Step 1, you have to detect and report the problem. Step 2, you contain it immediately. Stop the bleeding and prevent more damage. Step 3, you resolve the issue and get normal services back up and running. And finally, the most crucial step of all, Step 4, you track and learn from the incident to make damn sure it never, ever happens again. And we're not just talking about cyber attacks. Article 17 demands a full-on business continuity plan. That's the playbook for any major disruption, whether it's a natural disaster or a massive power grid failure. And this isn't some dusty binder sitting on a shelf. Banks are required to test this plan regularly with drills to make sure they can get core services back online, no matter what happens. So, we've walked through the assets, the fortress walls, the active defenses, and the crisis plans. Now let's just zoom out and bring it all together. Why does any of this incredibly detailed, super technical stuff actually matter to you and me? Well, when it comes right down to it, it's pretty simple. All of these rules, from password lengths to the locations of data centers, they form the bedrock of trust in our entire digital financial system. They are the invisible safety net that gives you the confidence to tap your phone for a coffee, pay your bills online, and manage your savings from anywhere in the world. That fortress, all those rules, that's what makes our modern financial world go round. But here's the thing, this digital fortress is never truly finished. The threats are always evolving. We're talking AI-powered phishing attacks, quantum computing that could shatter current encryption. It never stops. So the question we're all left with is, as the attacks get smarter and more sophisticated, what will the financial fortress of the future have to look like to keep us all safe tomorrow?